All right, thanks for coming back to the channel. Hey, I'm just trying to make something simple here for people that are like beginner, maybe a little bit of intermediate guitar players that are trying to learn new things and perspective on the guitar, right? Really the main things from my perspective is knowing, a little bit about the Western musical structure, right? Western musical structure. Once you understand that, the guitar becomes a lot easier, right? Because for a lot of times I think when a lot of people pick up the guitar, they just feel like they don't really understand the fretboard and how the strings relate to each other, right? But if we understand a little bit about the Western musical structure, for one thing, the Western musical structure includes these 12 semitones, what are called semitones or chromatic notes, right? They go up in a certain sequence of pitch that takes what we call an octave or a register of notes and breaks them up into certain increments, right? Increments, and then we can take the notes out of that sequence and make what we call diatonic scales or keys out of that, right? But the main thing is knowing those first 12 notes. What are those 12 notes, right? We've probably heard, maybe you're familiar with a bit of it already, right? But I'm saying like the letters A through G, and then it repeats itself, right? So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it repeats itself. Now, one of the most common keys that is played in westernized music is the key of C. So a lot of times we really start the sequence from the C note in many cases, especially we're talking about the key of C specifically, but it could start on any note. But like you said, it repeats A through G, and then it goes A through G again, right? But in that sequence of notes, we notice that A through G is really only like 7 notes. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? That's only 7 notes. And so with that 7 notes, that's the natural notes. These notes they're not sharp or flat. They're just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No sharps or flats in them, right? No sharps or flats. And the sharp and the flat thing can be a little confusing. It's really just a notationary thing, right? It's not anything particular about a note because it's sharp or flat per se that's making it so unique from the other notes. It's just that in a key, we would denote certain notes as sharp or flat in relation to that key, for instance, or in relation to another note, right? So now the 3 sharps, and there's a standard way of saying it. Sometimes a sharp could be referred to as a flat. A sharp of one note could be a flat of another note in that sequence of A through G, right? A through G, these 7 notes, 7 main natural notes, right? But we have an F, a C, F, and a G have a sharp to them. So there's still the C and the F and the G in the sequence, but there's also a C sharp, an F sharp, and a G sharp on top of them. Now sharp means it's going one half tone or one chromatic note or one semitone higher in pitch from the note in question. This note happens to be a G on the 3rd fret of this E-tuned string, right? G note, right? If we go 1 fret up from that's a G sharp, right? We're on a C note, which is on the 8th fret of the string, right? You might take note of these, and maybe you understand some of this stuff. Maybe you're kind of learning some stuff. But C sharp, so we have C, and we said that C has a sharp, so just 1 fret above that in pitch, just 1 semitone, 1 chromatic note, not 2 frets, but just 1 fret, right? C, and then C sharp, right? C on the 7th fret, C sharp on the 8th fret. So, like I said, C, F, and G have a sharp. So, just knowing that, we know that when we're playing like an F, and if we find an F and we know what it is, in this case it's the 1st fret of this particular string, then an F sharp is just 1 fret above that, right? So, now there's 3 sharps, like I said, C, F, and G, but there's also 2 flats, right? So, this is adding 3 plus 2 is giving you an additional 5 notes into this sequence, plus the original 7 natural notes is giving us a total of 12 chromatic semitones, right? And this chromatic semitones, 12 notes that would make up what we call a register, right? Or what we also might call an octave, which like stands for the number 8, right? So that means 8 notes because there's 7 notes, and then it repeats itself again in any one of these sequences, right? So like I said, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, where the new A and the second A is like the first note again in a different pitch, a different register, right? It's in a different register, it's in a higher register, right? But it's still the same note, but it's in a higher register, but it's considered to be the 8th note of a sequence of that octave, of a full octave, going from A to A, right? If we go where we go from A to G, that's 7 notes. It's not really a complete octave, what we call an octave, right? It's adding in that 8th note, which is also the first note of the next register, right? So, and that's a full register here. From going from this open note here, which in this case is an E note. If you have a guitar tuned to a standard tuning concert pitch, this would be an E note on this low end bassy string up here. We call low because it's bassy, right? But it's really on the higher end of the guitar. But that bass note, that E note, it's starting out a sequence of these 12 notes, right? The 7 notes with the sharps and the flats added in there to repeat itself back up here on the 12th fret, right? The 12th fret, which is the same as the first one, kind of like we said in the octave. The 8th note is the same as the first one because we're just talking about 7 notes in the scale. Maybe it starts coming together for you as you start seeing what I'm saying. But starting out of this first note, we have the E, which is a natural note, it's just an E, right? And then we have the E. We didn't say E had a sharp, right? So we said E has a flat and B has a flat, right? C, F, and G have a sharp. Now B and E have a flat once again, right? So there's 5 additional notes there. Just remembering that. Same time, those could alternate in different keys. They could be labeled something else, still the same note, right? Where a B flat might, like this is a B note on this 7th fret right here on this E string, right? It's a B note. A B flat is 1 fret lower. So like I said, sharp is 1 fret higher, right? A flat is 1 step, half a step. We call it half a step lower. And when I say half a step, I mean just 1 fret lower, right? Half a step higher being 1 fret higher, right? A whole step is 2 frets. So 2 frets is a whole step. 1 fret is a half step. So we really want to remember that when, we're hearing, maybe looking at notation or something like that. Half step is just 1 fret. So 1 fret, 1 fret or half step up is a sharp, and 1 fret or half step down is a flat, right? So in this case, we're talking about this B note. And you move it down half step, half step. That's giving us B flat, right? That's giving us a B flat note. So, and that note fits, like you said, it's a standard way of identifying this note, the most common way that probably most guitarists might identify it, but it's not always the strictest only way. It could also be referred to as maybe an A sharp, because this is an A note down here on the 5th fret. I could say it's an A sharp, right? It's a B flat or an A sharp, but the standard, most common way I think for most guitarists is probably B flat. Maybe leave me a comment, let me know what you think of that note as most commonly. Probably depends on what keys you play in the most, but also if you came from another instrument, you might be used to playing in different keys, or just for whatever reasons identifying it as a different label, but it's still the same note. B flat, A sharp, same thing. But like I said, the standard way, E and B have a flat, C, F, and G have a sharp. This is all right, I have a bird, so they might interrupt a little bit. But so going from E, we got E, F, right, in the 1st fret, E, F, and then 2nd fret, F sharp, right? So we know the F had a sharp. Now if it has a sharp, it's not going to have a F flat too. It's just there's an F and an F sharp, right? The note below it is going to be the next letter in the alphabet, which is E, right? E, F, F sharp, right? E, F, F sharp. And then G, right? So we're not going to have, after F sharp, there can only be a G, because there's not going to be like a double sharp. Double sharp would be the next letter in the alphabet, G, right? So E, F, F sharp, G. And we know that G had a sharp, as we just discussed in the standard way, G sharp, right? And then A, right? But if we look at that as the same principle here as what we did over here with the B flat, right? This G sharp, this G sharp could be referred to as an A flat, right? In some keys, right? It could be referred to as an A flat. G sharp, A flat, it's the same thing, same note, 4th fret on this E string, right? So we call it a G sharp is the most standard way. This maybe a guitarist might, right? So G sharp and then A, right? There's not going to be a 2 sharps. It's just going to be the next letter in the alphabet. In this case, A, right? And that's like the first letter in the alphabet, right? A. So that's where that A note would actually start on a guitar on this string. Right, so starting out in an E note is the actual name of the string. It's an E string when it's tuned up properly, right? But the A note on the 5th fret. So A, after A, like you said, there's obviously in the alphabet B, right? But we know that which ones have flats. We have B flat, right? So there has to be a B flat right there, right? It has to be a B flat because we know B has a flat. So A, B flat, not B, but A, B flat, right? Then the next note, B, right? If there's a B flat, there has to be a B, right? So A, B flat, B, and then after B, if there's a flat, there's not going to be a sharp too. So if there's a B flat, it's not going to be a B sharp, and there's not going to be an F sharp, and also an F flat, like we just talked about, right? So we have the B flat. I'm sorry, the B flat, and then the B. We're going to go to C, right? Just there's no, C doesn't have a flat. We know that only the B and the E have a flat, right? If it was a C flat, that would just be the next letter down in the alphabet, B, right? So which is on the 7th fret, 8th fret, once again 7th fret B, 8th fret C, right? So B, C, we know that C also has a what? The sharp, right? So the next fret has to be C sharp, right? The next fret has to be D. We know that the next letter in the alphabet, E, right? But what does E have in the standard way? It has E flat, right? E flat and then E again, right? So we just did back up to an E note, just like the open E note, but a register higher, right? A register higher. We can theoretically keep going up here to the same and repeat another 12 frets, even though it doesn't go quite to an additional 12 frets. But what we're doing is cutting at this 12th fret, cutting the string in exactly half, right? So that's the reason why it's giving us the same pitch, but a register higher. We're cutting it exactly half right there. Same thing with the 7th fret, cutting it into thirds, right? The 5th fret cuts it into fourths. You can even put it into fifths. If you get right here, get a harmonic, and they give you like a harmonic sound if you pluck them just right. Maybe you know about harmonics or artificial harmonics, maybe you want to learn about them, whatever, but I'm just talking about the concepts of, the physics of it a little bit in terms of how the concept of the string just being broken exactly half, and that's creating another octave. If we break that part of the string in half and theoretically had a fret right there at exactly half of this length, that would give us another octave or an E. But, up until that point, it's the same thing as what we did down here. But E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp. So E, right? F, F sharp, G, G sharp. A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D. And you see that's the highest fret it got is the D fret right here. But you notice right here, this G note, right here on this 15th fret, 12, 13, 14, 15, there's two dots right here, the halfway mark being your 12th fret, right? And this being your 15th fret, right? And that's where G starts again, which is a common key or mode to play in, kind of, or chord, but like I said, that's the 12 notes of starting from an E note, right? But we can start from any note, that 12 note sequence, and like even on the same string, just starting from the F note, right? F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F on the 13th fret, just 12 frets above the first fret. Right? Same thing with the F sharp, right? The F sharp's just right there. G, G, right? So we know that we're just an octave higher, right? A lot of the solos you play down here can be played up here, and to give them that higher pitch solo feel while you're playing a rhythm section or whatever. But you could also play the lead down there. Theoretically, it might not quite give the same feel as being on the higher end. You might want to play that higher end for a melody or a solo, but there's not like there's any strict rule to that, right? So, but like I said, we're doing 12 notes, and we can also take that same exact sequence and apply it to every other string. So as long as we know the names of the strings, and maybe in the standard tuning, maybe you're doing some other tuning or whatever. Let me talk about the standard tuning, right? That standard tuning means that this is an E string, right, tuned up to E, this lowest note. The next one's an A, right? The next one's a D, right? The next one's a G, next one's a B, and the last one's an E again, right? So that way they match right there. And that's the reason why they're tuned up the way they are, so that they can go through 2 octaves before when you're going down the strings, you're going down the scale. So, and that's maybe a little more advanced for you. Maybe you're already familiar with some scales, like we just took the 12 main notes, right? So like I said, we can go to the next string. It's A string right here, the 2nd string, and do that same sequence of 12 notes, but from the A note. Take into account that B and E have a flat, C, F, and G have a sharp. Same way, just start from the A note, open A note, second string, right? The next note, B flat, right? It's A, B, but B has a flat, right? The B, right? It has a flat, it doesn't have a sharp, so it's B flat, B, and then C, right? Then C has a what? A sharp. Next note is C sharp, right? D, E flat, just like up here. E flat, a few frets up higher on this string, right? And the 11th fret is E flat on this string, just a fret down from E on the 12th fret, right? So E flat down here. I'm sorry. Here we go. There, E flat, right? So E, right? And you see that's we're on the 7th fret of the A string. It's an E, right? F sharp, G, G sharp, A again on the 12th fret. Same thing with the next string, right? The next string is D. And then with the next letter E, but has a flat, right? D, E flat, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D. Same thing on the G string, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F sharp, G on the 12th fret. Same thing with the B string, right? So maybe you get the idea. B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B. Of course, the last E string could be just like the first string because they started out on the same note, E note, right? E, F sharp, G, G sharp, etc. So just knowing that, you kind of essentially know every note on the fretboard, starting from a reference point of just these 12 notes, right? Just these 12 standard notes is giving you every note on the entire fretboard, right? And then you keep going up from here to do the other, this is just the same notes as down here. This is all the same thing that's up here, just tighter because it's on a shorter string at that point. Like if you put a bridge right here, kind of like right here, open, this same as these notes, just an octave higher, right? So, if you know that, you can kind of just play anything you want up here, down here, up here, kind of, and maybe try different things, experiment, see what you like to play. Whether you want to be playing down here, but it's probably usually more for rhythm stuff. You probably be playing more stuff down here, and this a little more soloing here and in the mid-range, for example. But that's not a strict rule. Like I said, people solo down in the lower registers as well. But so, no, like I said, we got these 12 standard notes, right? And the next thing to identify the structure of a key, right? A major Western key, right? There's different keys and there's exotic keys and so forth. But I'm talking about the most common keys that probably fit into the most common, pop music and Western and melodic music, and jazz will probably get a bit more complex, but still encompass these main fundamental elements of a main major key, right? So what is the major key? It's taking certain notes out of those 12 notes, right? It's taking certain notes out of those 12 notes in a certain pattern that makes them diatonic in one key to where they can create harmonies better, I guess you could say. It's not like a strict rule. There's exotic stuff that's done with music that, is not really always in the norm of westernized music, right? Like chromatic types of music and so forth, right? But just talking about the Western key, right? We're taking certain notes out of this 12-note pattern. Starting from any note, right? You can be starting from an E note, you can be starting from an A note, you can be starting from a G note, you can start from an A note, A note on this string, whatever note it is. Starting this pattern, it's what this is called a pattern, right? It goes back to this steps that I was talking about earlier. Half step is like just one fret up or down, right? Whether you're talking about a half step up or half step down, it's just one fret, right? A whole step being 2 frets up or 2 frets down, right? A whole step up or a whole step down, right? So if you do 1.5 steps, that's 3 whole steps, But really, we mainly deal with just most of the time you'll be hearing a half step and a step, right? Away from a note, for example, right? So if you say, oh, it's half step up, it's going a half step up, right? It's a half step up, it's going a half step up, right? It's a half step down, right? One fret. A whole step, 2 frets, right? Once again. So as long as you understand that, you can basically derive this major key for any key, right? Because we understand this pattern. What is this pattern? It's called what we call 2 whole steps and then a half step, right? One half step, 2 whole steps and a half step, and then 3 whole steps and a half step, right? 3 whole steps and a half step. So we can start from any note. Let's say we start from the E note, which is an open string. So it's, it's just the bridge. It's not an extra fret per se. It's just an open string, right? That's the first note in the key of E major, which is what we're going to talk about right here with this pattern of 2 whole steps and a half step and then 3 whole steps and a half step, right? E is the first note. So the second note is one of those first 2 whole steps, and the third note is the second of those first 2 whole steps, right? So E is going to go a half step is just F, right? We want to go a whole step. In that case, we're going to F sharp, so it's really E, F sharp, right? Well, what's a whole step up from F sharp? It's another 2 frets. That's G sharp, right? Happens to land on this note G sharp, right? So after we did the first 2 whole steps, now we do a half step, right? So we just do 1 fret up, right? So that goes to A in this case, in the key of E major, right? E, F sharp, G sharp, A, right? Then we do 3 whole steps and a half step. Then we do 3 whole steps and a half step, and it's going through those 12 notes, and just these certain notes out of that 12 notes. It's just these are 7 notes, right? 7 notes, and then repeating itself. The first note repeating itself would be an octave, but we're going through that, 2 whole steps, a half step, and then we're going to do another 3 whole steps. So this is the first of the 3 whole steps. This is the second of the 3 whole steps. So the first one, let's go back, this note over here is A, right? So that first of the 3 whole steps goes from A to B, skips B flat, right? A to B. The second whole step goes over C, right? And goes straight to C sharp, right? On the 9th fret. So, right? So B, C sharp. Then we're going to do 1 more whole step, right? For a last whole step to E flat, right? E flat. And then after that, we're going to have 1 more half step to repeat the octave on E again, being the first note of the key or the 8th note to end or complete an octave, right? So E, F sharp, G sharp, G, A, B, I'm sorry, what am I doing? I'm sorry, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, E flat, E, right? In the key of E major, right? You notice that E major is having some sharps and flats in it, right? There is one key that doesn't have any sharps and flats, and that's the most common key, I would say, is the one I was talking about in the beginning, right? C major, right? C natural major key doesn't have any sharps or flats because of the way it falls on those 12 notes. It skips over the sharps and the flats, the E and the B flat, and the C, G, and F sharps, right? So, but in the key of E, you notice we do have some sharps and flats, right? So, but if we start from the C note, which is on this 8th fret, right? So E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C, B flat, B, C, C sharp. This is being the C note right here on the 8th fret, right? C note. Now if we started from there and did the whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, and ended up on a C note down here on the 15th, 17th, 20th fret. We ended up on a C note again, right? That would be playing the key of C major. Right, so we do the 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step from a C note in that case. And you can see we're going from C, skipping over C sharp to D, right? That first whole step, C, D, skipping another whole step over to E, right? And then that's the first 2 whole steps. Then a half step to F, same as this first fret down here, F, right? So F. And then we're doing the 3 whole steps and a half step back onto C again. So we're going from F, G, A, B, C. So you notice I didn't use any sharps or flats. It was just A, B, C. I mean C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. From a C note. Right now, we started from the E note. You see it's giving us some sharps and flats. We can start from an F note. Same thing. Same principle. 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step, right? So from the F note to me, F, skip a fret, whole step to G, right? Whole step to A, half step to B flat, whole step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E, half step back to F again, right? In that case, giving us an octave, a complete octave in the key of F major, right? We can do this from any string, any note on any string. We can go down here to this C note on the A string, places or C, key of C, D, E, two whole steps, half step, right? F, yeah, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C again. So, just an octave right there. That little stretch of that string is an octave. This stretch from this F to this F is an octave. The stretch right here from this, a D, right? The stretch from this D, that'd be the completion of a register, which encompasses an octave, or 12 chromatic semitones if you want to play every note. But that probably won't sound very melodic or musical, just playing chromatically, like playing every note and trying to make a song out of it, But that doesn't mean it's a strict rule. There's different elements to music to understand besides just the Western music scales. But once you know this 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step from any note, you can play in any key. Right now, somebody says play in the key of B flat major. Right, you can go to the B flat note, because you know how to derive the B flat note. If you're not sure about it for any reason, you can go to an E string, or you can go to a G string right here. You go G, A, B flat. Right, just derive the 12 notes, going to the 12 note sequence with, like I said, E and B having a flat, C, G, and F having a sharp. And understanding, if you see some notation somewhere where it says something like, an A flat, it's meaning the same thing as a G sharp. Same thing as a G sharp, right? So like different music notation and different instruments and so forth for the piano or clarinet or something like that. It could be different notation, but overall it's still the same 12 notes, and you're still using in many cases the same pattern of 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. So once we know this, we can identify any note on the fretboard just by deriving it. We also we can identify the notes in any key on any string essentially now, right? Because we know the name of each string, and we can start off and find each note from each string, and then we can play whole step, half step, whole step, half step from any note. If all of a sudden you're playing a key of, say, this song's in the key of A major, we can just go to A note, whole step, half step. Now that's the next thing, is understanding how this is going to go down to the next string, right? Maybe you want to play in one position. You don't want to play the song, jam it up and down the string, all the way up and down here to play. You might want to play some going down here. And that's why the strings are tuned the way they are. Like most of them are, like 5 frets away from each other. So when I play this A note right here on the 5th fret of the E string, that's the same as this A string, right? They're designed to be tuned to that way, except for one string, right? So, but this next one here, this is, a D note, right? On this A string, the D note on the 5th fret matches the D string, right? The next note is a D string, the next string is a D note, right? The same thing with here, it's a G, matches this G in the next string. Right? And you tune the guitar up like that if you want to, at least relatively speaking. There's more to maybe do to really make sure you're in good tune, but that could kind of help you get, your guitars pretty in tune. Just tuning relatively to each other through the 5th fret, except for on the G and the B string, it's on the 4th fret. And it has to do that, so that way this next string down, the last string, can also be an E note, right? So that way you can play chords with multiple E notes in it, or whatever note you're playing. In this case, A note, because we're on the A position here. But if we're playing an E chord with the bass being an E note, it has like 3 E notes in there. This E here, and then this E here, and this note there, and then this last string is open. So those are 3 E notes in that E major chord, right? And that's one of the notes in the main, like a major chord, right? That's another thing too to understand, is how a chord is made, right? Now there's also what we call the minor scales as well, to the minor mode, and the minor is really just starting from the 6th note in the major key, right? So it's really just starting from the 6th note in the major key. So like, quickly before I continue there, I'm talking about let's say the key of G, right? I'm starting from a G note. We do 2 whole steps, half step, 2 whole steps, and then a half step back onto G, right? The corresponding minor for G, well, what's the 6th note in the key of G? So we take the key of G and do 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, half step, and the first note is the G note. They're in G, right? And then A, and then B, the 3rd note, right? And then C, right? You notice it doesn't have many sharps and flats in the key of G major, right? So C, then D. So like once again, this is the first note, right? So G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, D is 5, and E is 6. Right? E is the 6th note out of the key of G major. So that would be its corresponding minor key. That we say something's in the key of E minor, it's kind of like saying the same thing as the key of G major. It's all the same notes. It's all the same notes. It's just starting from an E note in that sequence of 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, half step from the G note, from a G note, right? So I'm playing the key of G, right? 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and then a half step. What if we just started from the E note and played all the same notes that we would like? If we continued up from a G note here in the key of G, it would be G, A, B, same way as we did down here. But let's just say we're starting from an E note or this open E note, either one. Starting from that E note, like so let's just say we go from E, F sharp, G. Right? We know the 7th note in any key is just any major key is just a half step down from it. Because you notice when we went, 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. The last one is just a half a step before the note repeats itself. The register repeats. The new G note starts over again. The first note, or the 8th note that completes the octave. You notice it's just a half step away. So knowing that, we know that any major key, just the 7th note or the note right before the first note is just a half step down, right? So in the key of G, once again, or from here, here, either G note. These are both G notes, right? Think of the 15th fret as like the 3rd fret from this bar. Like this is the 3rd fret from this bar, right? Same thing with the A, see? Right, so, but yeah, so like you said, don't understand this G, the key of G, we're understanding the 7th note in the key of G has to be F sharp, half step down, right? Has to be F sharp. So, like I said, we're starting from an E note in the key of G, right? E, F sharp, G. So you notice we're not doing 2 whole steps there. We're doing 1 whole step and a half step, right? So all the notes are the same. We're just starting from that point in the sequence. We're just starting from the E note in the G major, the key of G major sequence, right? If we were in the key of E major, we'd have to play the E, whole step, half step, right? As the normal major key signature for a key, right? Major key of E major is going to start from the note E, right? But in this case, we're talking about the key of G. So that 2 whole steps, half step starts out from a G note. And so that just so happens that from an E, if we keep playing in the key of G, playing that E note has to go to F sharp and then just G, not G sharp, right? So E, F sharp. And the pattern starting from the minor is, like I said, this is an E note, so that's a whole step. That one's a half step, so it's just whole step, half step right away, right? And then it's your 2 whole step. It's like, the G is the first note, so, whole step, half step. 2 whole steps, a half step, and then 3 whole steps and a half step, and it's starting over. You end on the E note. Using an E note as your tonal center, it would be considered the key of E minor. Right, but really it's kind of the same thing like saying the key of G major because it's all the same notes, really. If I play some notes from the key of G major, I go over here and play E minor. You notice it has a lot of the same feel to it. It might be a slightly different positioning or a different root from there, but it's still all the same notes from the key of G major. So hopefully that's kind of clarifying itself, or just starting from a different note in a key. We're talking about G major. That is the first note that indicates what we call the first mode, right? The mode of a key, or the degree of a key, right? In the key of G major, G is the first degree, right? The first degree of that key. But the second degree would be A, third B, right? So or note in that key major of that major key. So now we know that, like, we know how to find the major, the notes from a major key, and then we know where the minor is in relation to any major key. Like, now we know that G, the E minor, and G major correspond, or really the same key largely in some respects, even though they're using a different tonal center. That's why we call it E minor instead of G major. But most of the time we're talking about a major key, right? We're talking about it from the major key. And so we can do that with any note, right? You can go to A major, right? A major. And you notice the minor is 1.5 steps below the major. So this G that represents a G, the first note of a G major key, right? The minor, the E minor, is a half step, whole step, a step and a half, right? It's a step and a half down from the major key note. So if we're over here in the key of A major, whole step, half step, whole step, half step to A again, right? We're over here in the key of A. The corresponding minor for the key of A is 1.5 steps down, or 3 frets down from the A note. So we're going half step to G sharp, whole step to G, and then 1.5 steps down to F sharp, right? So the corresponding minor key for A major is F sharp minor, right? F sharp minor. And with C, key of C, this note, C note, starting whole step, half step, right? And then 3 whole steps and a half step, making the key of C major, right? The corresponding minor for the key of C is, once again, 1.5 steps down from the first degree of that key of C major is an A note, right? The 1.5 steps down from C, A note. Right? So we know that A minor corresponds with C major. Right? So this is just a little bit of a side note to understand what is meant by when someone says the key is in some minor key, right? So it's a minor key. It really corresponds to a major key, right? Just think 1.5 steps above that minor. So if I'm talking about G minor from a G note, 1.5 steps above G minor is a B flat. That's the corresponding major for G minor, right? So they have many of the same notes. Like I said, the chords would be played different, with different notes because they're playing from that first degree and that particular modal scale of minor or major. That's its own thing, is recognizing how the chords are structured, right? Like a major chord is structured with the first, third, and fifth note out of that major key. So if you're looking at this key of G major, starting from a G note, whole step, half step, 3 whole steps, half step, what's the first, third, and fifth note out of that key? Well, we know the first note is G, right? The second note is A, right? But we're not using the second note for a G major chord. We're using the first, third, and fifth note out of the key of G major to make a G major chord, right? So G, right? Not A, because that's the second note, but rather B, right? G and B are the first 2 notes of those. The second one, we're at the, like you notice from the key of G, we're still whole step, half step. So that fourth note in the key of G is right here on the C note, right? So we just did 2 whole steps and a half step, and we ended up on the fourth note. That's a C note, right? So relating that back to the G major, what we want to do is be able to take the G major and identify, what notes are making up that G major chord. So we have the first, third, and fifth chord. We have the G, the B, and the D note, which is actually the fifth note, because the C is the fourth note, right? So the D is the fifth note in the key of G. D, right? So G, B, and D make up a G chord, right? If I take what we might know, you might already know, is a G major bar chord here in the third position. You might see the fingering of this chord, right? These two are on the same fret on these 2 strings, and this one's on this G string down here. So that's a G major chord, right? That's comprised of nothing but G's, B notes, and D notes, because because that's the first, third, and fifth note of G major. Right, so this is a G note. This one here is a D, right? This one here is a G. This one's a B. And I'm sorry, yeah, this one's a B. And then this one here is a. I'm sorry, this one here is what? G, C. I'm sorry, D. Right, that's a D again. So that's a D and then a G again. Right, so it has 3 G's, 2 D's, and 1 B. Right, so but it's still a total of just 3 different unique notes. Right, but there's multiple ones of. There's 3 E's in there from different octaves. I'm sorry, 3 G's in there from different octaves. In that case, right? So G major chord, playing a G major chord. Now, this is another thing too. You know, like I said, you've identified maybe how to play any major chord, play the first, third, and fifth notes, and it could be any combination of that first, third, and fifth notes. But ideally, the lowest note is going to be the root note of that chord. So if it's called a G something, that means the lowest note in that chord is G, right? Doesn't mean it couldn't be talked about in other ways. You can say, oh, it's a G chord, but really it's not the bass note. But for the most part, you know, as a standard principle, the lowest note is the main symbol name of the note. So this is this G major, right? Now, if we take this G major chord, we understand there's 12 notes, the 12 standard notes, right, with the 3 sharps and 2 flats. We can start from this G, for instance, and just take that same chord structure for a G major and move that up a fret. Now we have G sharp major, right? G sharp major, right? Because we know that G sharp. Right? All the notes are moving up 1 fret. Right? Next one, obviously, hopefully, A. All right, A, G sharp, A. It's a major chord, right? B flat, B, C sharp, major. Right, these are all majors. Unless we take out this one note and flatten it, then it will make it a minor. Right, so that's its own part. You know, it's another part of a discussion there. But I'm just saying, starting from any bass note, playing this fingering position in a standard guitar tuning to guitar, you're going to be playing that major chord. So down here, what is that? This is an F note, right? So this fingering, that's going to be an F chord, F major chord, right? So F sharp major, G sharp major, A major. So right there, I'm able to really find, I could play a version of any major chord right there just with that one thing, right? So you know, just play it on. I would play in that position: E, F, F sharp, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C sharp, D, E. C sharp, D, E flat, E again, E major. Right, same thing as E major open. Right. Now you can kind of take that concept and apply it to basically any chord that you play. Right, so as long as you understand that sometimes you're playing open strings, you're going to have to apply moving those up too. So if you're playing any open strings, keep in mind, like for example, I go to this A minor chord, which is a lot like the E major. It's just all the fingers are a fret or a string down. You might be playing it like these fingers. I like to play it with this, that way you can be ready to play a bar as we move up. Let's say we go for A minor. Right, this A minor chord. Maybe you can see, and you already know how to play an A minor open A minor chord, right? Move it up a fret, and then add the bar. Right, now we have B flat minor, right? B flat minor. So if we play an A major chord, open A major, we're playing all 3 of these on the same fret. Move them up, B flat major. Right, so let's say we're doing the minor: A minor, B flat minor, B minor, C minor, C sharp minor, D minor, E flat minor, E minor, F sharp minor, G minor, G sharp minor. Right? You're getting right up to the 12th fret again. A minor. Right? Just like over here when we started. Right? So take a C. Play it with these 3 right here. Right? Try to get used to playing it with those 3. If you wanted to move up from this position at least. I might not always do it, but like playing this open C chord. Move it all up a fret. Add a bar. C sharp, right? D. It's a little bit of a tricky chord to play. It takes some practice. Not super easy, especially down here. But D. And if you notice, the last four strings of this D chord is shaped like an open C, but up here with the bar, make sure you're back enough. You're not over here or something like that, but you're back. You're in the right positioning. But you notice the last four notes are the same notes of the open D chord, an open D major chord. If you're familiar with that chord, right? An open D major, right? And people play it like that because this string happens to be a D string that's four string down, as long as you're tuned standard to D string, so that can play a bass. And these rest of these notes are ones, threes, and fives from the key of D, making a D major chord. Just like we talked about the 1, 3, and 5 from the key of G major, right, unless otherwise noted. When I say the key of G, I mean the key of G major. Same thing with the key of D. I mean G major, unless I indicate, or I mean D major, unless I indicate D minor. Right? The standard thing is just to say, hey, D. If I say the key of D, I mean D major, unless otherwise indicated. Right? But playing that D chord, well, that's not really the full D chord for that, for all the strings. It's really this, right? That's like the full version of the chord, right? What's that next after D? B flat major, right? E, F, F sharp, G. Same as these other G's, right? This bar chord G in the 3rd fret, using this G note as a bass note, right? Or this open G, still using this G note as a bass note, right? But maybe you're familiar that there's some chords played with the 2nd string, or even maybe the 3rd string uses a bass note, but right now we're talking about just the first 2 strings primarily, because they're kind of considered to be the 2 main bass notes on a guitar, right? So you could play like, this G major open, G major, or we can go right up here to this one here, which is playing from the same bass note essentially. Just playing 1s, 3s, and 5s from the key of G, which is G, B, and D, right? G, B, and D, or just some combination of them. Right? This one has a slightly different voicing of G's, B's, and D's. This is a G, this is a B, this is a D, this is a G, this is a B, and this one here, over here it's a G again, right? So G's, B's, and D's. As long as you're playing G's, B's, and D's, you're playing a variation of a G major chord, right? And same thing with another key, with whatever other key you're in. Like I said, in this case, talking about a D note. Doesn't mean we're necessarily playing in the key of D major per se, but when we're deriving the D major chord, we have to take into account the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note from the key of D major to make a D major chord. And in the key of D, what is the 1st, 3rd, and 5th chord? Well, let's go right here to this top D right here. I'm going to use this D. The 2nd note is an E note, right? The 3rd note, which is what we need, is an F sharp, right? The 4th note is a G, and the 5th note is an A. So, in other words, D, F sharp, and A are the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes out of the key of D major, and hence those are the 3 notes that comprise a D major chord. Right, so D, once again, D, F sharp, and A. So from here, this is a D on this G, on this B string, right? B, C, C sharp, D, right? So that D chord, that D note, this note right here is an F sharp, right? Which we just said D, F sharp, and A, right? So this note is an F sharp. So you can see all the notes right here. This note is a D. So you're making a D major chord. The full chord here with nothing but D's, F sharps, and A's is this full D chord, right? So like I said, you notice this chord here, or this C chord right here, 2 frets down from it, the open C. It's using the 2nd string as its bass note. Theoretically, you don't play the 1st string when you're playing this chord, because the C is the main low tonic note of that chord, or the root note of that chord, right? It's a C chord. If you play it with this E up here, it's not necessarily going to hurt it, because E is one of the 3 notes that make up a C major chord, for one thing, right? right? So it fits within the chord of C major, but also, that would really be a variation of an E chord, some complex name maybe or something. I can't remember what it would be, might it be called, but or you might say an E/C, where it's really just that one note is added as the bass note. In this case, an E note, but the rest of it's a C major chord. An E/C is kind of a short notation way of saying it, but it's really an E flat 7/5, whatever. I don't know if by all means put maybe the answer, but hopefully it's accurate, right? So, but like I said, so that's a C major chord, really ideally without that extra E note, theoretically, but usually it doesn't hurt the song. It might even help it. So if you play that E note, because like I said, it's part of a C chord, right? A C is made of a C from a C note here on this E strings. The third note in the key of C is skipping over the second note, D. Third note is E, right? Fifth note is G. So C, E's, and G's. C's, E's, and G's make up a C major chord, right? So you're understanding a little bit maybe more about just basic major chord structure, right? You're understanding how to find a key for so this kind of gives you a bit of structure to kind of work with. You can say, hey, I want to take any chord, just move it up in those 12-note sequence, and I can derive any chord from that. I can say, hey, well, play a E minor, just simple E minor, move it up, and then F minor, right? F sharp minor, G minor, right? G sharp minor, A minor, pretty common position, or A major. And the third note in the key of A major and A minor are just one note that's different because the way the patterns happen to fall, just one note happens to be different, and that gives it a different sound, right? So instead of just an A major. But what is an A minor? It's really a derivative from a different major key, right? 1.5 steps above the minor, just like the minor is 1.5 steps below the major. So from the minor, if we're talking about A minor, what's the corresponding major? Once again, it's 1.5 steps or 3 frets up from A, C major, right? So C major, corresponding minor. So you can often use them in the same song. I go down here to D minor, E minor. I can play this F. I can also play an F major 7, add a little extra color of a note, because I'm just still staying in the key of C in this case. I'm just tweaking a note off of a regular F chord, F major chord, which is kind of like an open A down here, but up here it's going to be an F. Right? So all these are on the same fret. Some people might just play it something like that. I always usually play it like this with the 3 fingers, but making an F major chord. But if we play maybe some variation of this F major chord, maybe we move some other finger around to another note, just as long as it stays in the key that we're playing in, which may be in the key of F. But maybe we're not necessarily playing the key of F. We're playing in the key of, maybe C sharp or something, and F is the third note in the key of C sharp, and C sharp. Let me see. F is going to be a minor chord actually. So let's say we're playing the key of B, right? And then F would be the 5th note in the key of B major, and that would make it also a major chord. It would happen to fall into the pattern of major. This is a little bit more next level from here, but this is understanding which chords in a key would be major and minor and why, right? So anyway, playing this F major chord right here, right? I can play some other note. Maybe I want to add in some other note from the key, or maybe to play an F major 7, because when I lower this one note, which is an F note right here, a C note in this case, then I can go ahead and lower it down to, let me see, what is that? An E note? Yeah, E. I'm sorry, this is an F note. Sorry, F note. Lower it down to an E, right, making it a major 7th, meaning it's the 7th note from the major key in question, which in this case is F. We're talking about an F chord, which uses the 1st, 3rd, and 5th from the key of F major, right? But then we add in a 7th from the key of F major, meaning it's now an F with a major 7th added to it, right? A 7th from that key of F major, which we still have other F's in here, so we can go ahead and change this one F. It's still not going to change the overall effect of the chord, because we have at least 2 other F's in this chord, right? But if we, like this one right here, for instance, So if we go and just move this one fret down, one fret, this one, we play F major 7. Gives us that kind of feel to it. I also play this F major chord over here, and this type of fingering, like the E major, right, open, and then go up here to F major. This also has a major 7th way of playing a major 7. Just take the chord, the F note right here, which is on this string, and lower it half a fret, so you'd be playing it a little bit different than the normal major way, but instead you'd be lowering this one string down to make it what we call F major 7, which is essentially the same chord as this over here. Right, so when we say we're adding a 9th or a 7th or something, we're adding a number, a degree from that chord. Now, if you say like the 9th, you say, well, there's only 7th notes in a key, in a scale, or 8 when you count the first one over again, right? So the 9th was really the second one. It's just an octave higher than the original. So, like, you know, this G right here, G major chord. What's a 9th from a G? Well, 7th from a G chord is an F sharp, right? So it's a major 7th, right? So we play a G major 7th. Let's say I'm not going to flatten this G. I'm going to flatten this G down here. So we still have a G chord with the main G note as a bass note. We're flattening this G. We're making it a G major 7, just like we did with this F and this F major 7. Right, we're making this G a G major 7. G9, for instance, we would want to take the G at least an octave higher and then go up 2 notes from that, right? Or 1 note from that. So like this is a G, this is a G, you know, this is a G down here. If we wanted to add, like this is a G, this means it's a 1. It's also an 8th of the previous octave. So the 9 would be like right here. This would be a 9, right? So if I was to play a G9, I could play like, you know, something like be adding that 1 note in there. Now that would maybe take me away from playing another note, so it kind of really alters the chord in some other ways possibly. But maybe I'm taking it away from something that leaves it on the same note that I'm playing down here or something, you know. All kinds of little things you might take into account if you're playing, but it's kind of a perfect math, if you will. But right here I'm playing like a G9, or if I want to play a G11, I might, you know, go up another to the next note in the key of G, which in this case happens to be a B note. Right? So anyway, this just gives you some ideas on how to, like, the fretboard structure and finding chords in a key. Right, now understanding also in a key that there's, like I said, a note for each degree of the key. Right, 8 notes, or 7 with the 1 repeating over as an 8 or a 1, like G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and that's the 7th, and then G again, being 1 or 8 of a complete octave, right? So once you know that, then you know, like, hey, well, you know the notes from each key, from any key, but also they have corresponding chords that go to them, right? So we have this key of G once again, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So the first chord in the key of G, which kind of makes sense, starting from the first note, G, right, would be in the key of G major, would be G major chord, right? Which is the one we just talked about. The 1, 3, and 5 out of the key of G major will make a G chord, G major chord, right? The next chord in the key of G is going to go up a whole step, right? The next chord corresponds with the second note in the key of G major, which is A, right? And the second chord is going to be minor. It's going to be minor, right? Because the way the finger pattern is going to fall, it's going to cause the third note in that major key to be flattened, making it a minor. It's going to be a minor. So the first chord is G major, right? Now if we moved every note up here in this G major chord to the next note in the key of G major, we end up with an A minor, right? So if we were to take each note from each note, that, like this is a G note. We know the second note in the key of G is A, so that would be the next note up here in this string. Right? If we play this next string, we're playing this 5th fret, right? So the next note in the key of G on this, so this is a D note, right? In the key of G, D goes straight to E, so it's right here, right? So there's D to E. So if we have, you know, like this note here is moving up one note in the key of G major. This note here is moving up one note in the key of G major. This one here is moving up one note in the key of G major, right? But to stay in the key of G major, this note here, or I'm sorry, this note right here, we're playing G major, only has to go up half a step, right? Because in the key of G, this right here is a B note, right? And in the key of G, starting like going back over to the stop string, G, A, B, right? That's 2 whole steps. So the next one has to be a half step, right? C, right? So if we're playing this B down here, I'm sorry, this B note here on the 4th fret of the G string, the next note in the key of G major is just a half step up. So this can't go up 2 frets like the other strings do. It has to only go up 1 fret. So instead of playing this finger patterning here for a G major, when we get up to the A, we have to take this one finger off and let it be played a half step lower with where the bar is at, and make it A minor. For it to stay, to use an atonic root note in the key of G major, right? We're not going to play an A major chord, we're going to play A minor, because going up 1 fret, or not 1 fret, but 1 note in the key of G major on every string. It could be different in each string. Like I said, all of them go up 1 whole step, except for this 4th string, which only is essentially moving up a half step when you do that. So it's just this note here moving up to here, right? So right, now the next chord in the key of G, right, is another whole step. So we did 2 whole steps, right? We just did the one, G to A, so G major, A minor. But the next note, the chord in the key of G is B minor, right? So it's fingered the same way as the A minor. It's just the same thing, 2 frets higher. Every note goes up 2 frets higher, right? So you notice that none of the frets are, moving up at a different pace. It's all the same, all notes move up 1 fret, because it just happens to be that the next note in the key of G from all of these notes is a whole step, right? Now the next chord, or the 4th chord in the key of G, is C, right? Now move up each note 1 note in the key of G major, right? This B has to go to C, right? Not C sharp. Just that's your first half step in the key of G, right? So you go to C. You go to C, right? And this chord is played major, because it just so happens that that note here has to go up to this note right here, which is an E, instead of just an E flat, right? So it has to go up. So C major, right? Just like we played the G major, same fingering as the G major. So this C and the G are same formation, just from a C note and from a G note, G major. The 2 chords in between were both minor, right? The 2nd and 3rd note of the major key in question, G major, right? The 1st and the 4th note make a major chord for that major key, right? The 1st and 5th. So G major, right? Once again, this is the 1st chord in the key of G major, right? The 4th chord in the G major starts from the 4th note in the key of G major, which is C once again, C major, right? The next chord in the key of G major is D, right? Major. Once again, moving every note up in the key of D, key of G major, yields a D major, right? Every note just moves up 2 frets, or a whole step, right? Now the next one, the next one is the E note is the 6th note in the key of G major, and it also represents the corresponding minor for the key of G major, like we talked about a little while ago. It's a step and a half below a G, which this is a G note on the 15th fret again. This is a step and a half below. This is a 12th fret, same as our open E, right? And we're on the G note. This is the 6th note, right? And it would also represent a corresponding minor to G. So, and it also is obviously, in that sense, a minor chord, A minor. So just like we played this G and this B minor, this E is also minor if we're playing in the key of G major, right? So we're playing an E chord in the key of G major. It has to be an E minor chord. Right? Theoretically, not like an absolute strict rule. Some songs can be written with certain nuances of different stuff, but I'm talking about the general rule with most Western music. Right? So E minor. Now the last one is what we call like a minor 7 flat 5. In this case, it would be an F sharp note, being the 7th note in the key of G major. Right? The 7th note in the key of G major, right before the G again. Right? So F sharp. And the F sharp is a minor 7 flat 5. A lot of people consider it to be a useless chord in a useless position, but I don't know if I necessarily see it that way. It might have its own uses for certain songs. It usually resolves back up to the first note, which in this case would be G, or a G major chord. Kind of hard to play up here, but same thing as G major down here, but an octave higher. Right, so we went through the 7 corresponding chords of a major key, and it could start from any key, right? Let's say we start from, B flat right here, major. Same as a G minor, G major fingering is the same. It's just from B flat, right? B flat major. Next note in B flat, C, right? Whole step, half step, right? So then C minor is the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th note from a key is minor, like we just went through G. So if you just kind of notice that the 1st, 4th, and 5th chord was a major chord. The 2nd, 3rd, and 5th, the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th chords out of the 7 notes were minor. And the last 7th note was what we call a minor 7 flat 5, or I think they can call it an augmented chord. I don't know every element of it, but it's just basically moving each note of every chord one more step up in that major key, that one major key in question. Like it went from G, right, A minor, B minor. Those are, 1st, 3rd, 3rd, 5th. 4th. First chord, right, G. 2nd chord, A minor. 3rd chord, B minor. 4th chord, C major. 5th chord, D major. 6th chord, E minor. 7th chord, F sharp, minor 7 flat 5. One note's not necessarily belonging in there. It's not exactly easy to finger that chord on every string, I don't think, but for the most part, that's the chord. Kind of has a certain dissonance to it. But right before you get to G major again. So, hopefully this is giving you a little bit of an idea of how to find the chords from a key, how to find the chords, and also finding some of the notes, whole step, half step, then understanding how the strings are tuned to each other. So this is an A note on this 5th fret, it matches, we tune them 5th fret all the way except for the G and the B, they're tuned to the 4th fret, but down here back to the 5th fret, I'm probably falling out of tune just a little bit. But once you know that, you can take each note from one string down to the next string, right? This is an A note, and there's an A note here, and the 2nd string open, so anything you play might have a slightly different timbre, it's a different note, different width of the note, the string, and so forth, but it's still the same notes, right? So if you start playing, I might decide to go, I might play this note down here instead of up here, right? So that's where we would say, we take a scale like the key of G major, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. And instead of playing it all down one string like that, in some cases it might be more in order to be able to play more notes quickly and stuff like that, to play it down the string. So instead of going G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, I would go the same notes going down here, following, instead of playing this note here, playing it down here. So it's G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? This too, always an octave as long as you're in a standard tuning. One fret between these two strings, right? The 1st and 3rd string, right? The E string and the D string, one fret away from each other. The D string further down, closer to the neck. It's always going to match. Right? These two are G notes, right? Go down to the next 2 strings, it's the same thing. Really, I should be playing with these 2 fingers, but see, these 2 notes match. This is a C note. This is also a C note. But down here on these 2 strings, we have to do 1 fret away, because you notice this fret here, when we tuned to the G to the B, it was 1 fret down, so we have to make up for that. So these 2 strings match. And this is like a F note. Same thing down here. them up. You know, this is an E note. We know that's an E note right there, the 12th fret of an E string, right? The E note. So this is an E note. So quickly kind of identify, oh, well, if this is, you know, a B note, then this right here is also a B note. But if you're up on these two strings, it's only 1 fret away. So this is a G note. This is a G note. 1 fret away from each other. 1 string and 1 fret away from each other. Right? The A string and the G string. So kind of gives you an idea where some notes match, just going up and down here like this, right? Once again on this G note. See that? These two are 1 fret away. These two strings and these two strings 1 fret away. These two strings 2 frets away. And these two strings 2 frets away. Will always match any position, right? So you know, so it's the same thing anywhere you're at, whatever note you're on. In this case, D, right? So then the next note is this note, which right off the top of my head is a G note, right? So D, G. This one here is this is a B string. This is a C. So this is C notes, right? This is an F note right here, 1st fret, you know, or 13th fret, 1st fret, you know. So it's an F, and this is also an F. They're not perfectly matched, but you know, you get the idea, right? So once we know that, right, so we found how to find the major chords out of a key, the 1st, 4th, and 5th, right? And the minors, the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th, and then the 7th one being a little bit of an off note chord, which is a minor 7 flat 5. Mainly, probably most of the time, we're going to be playing the first 6, but you know, it's good to understand the minor 7 flat 5 to some degree on that 7th note or 7th degree of a major key. So this is a little bit here, is kind of a bit in this. You might want to watch this over again to kind of get a grip on some of that if you're like a beginner guitarist. Because once you do, trust me, it'll take you like light years ahead. A lot of other guitar players that don't really ever get down and just flesh this stuff out, right? You know, understanding what every note on the guitar fretboard is and how to derive it, what the 12 standard note sequences, the semitones, the chromatic notes, right? How to derive a major key out of that, and there's 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step, right? How to find a major chord out of that key, right? And starting from the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note. And we can start the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note from any part of the key, and that's what would make that other like chord be either major or minor, right? So in the key of G, once again, here this 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes are, you know, C, B, and D. All right, the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes. We go to the A note, which is the 2nd note in the key of G major. Right, starting from there, it's given the same G major pattern. Right? We just go from A to B to C, right? Just 1 whole step and a half step, because we're starting on the 2nd whole step here of this major key of G major. Right, the 2nd whole step starts from A. You know, the 2nd still whole step starts from A, goes to B, and then right away you go into a half step. If you want to stay in the key of G major, right, stay in the key of G, and if we're playing an A major, then it's going to be 2 whole steps from an A note. But right now we're playing from an A note, which is the 2nd note from the key of G major, which we might be trying to stay in the key of G major. But we're still doing the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note from the A note from the key of G. Right? So in that case, what that means is the 1st note is A, the 3rd note is C, right? Just 1.5 steps up. In this case, A, C, and then the 5th note in that sequence is E. Right, so A, C, and E are making up an A minor chord, right? A, C, and E make up the 2nd chord in the key of G major, which is A minor, right? So that's why this A minor chord has to be played with this 1 note flat, the 3rd note, instead of being a 2 whole steps up, is from this 1st note from A, which is really, we're playing from the key of G once again. That 3rd note is only 1.5 steps up, where if we're playing from the key of G, the 3rd note would be, you know, 2 whole steps up, right? So from playing from the A in the key of G, the 3rd note is just 1.5 steps up, right? So that means we're playing a chord like A major, right? We need to lower that 3rd note to make it minor, so that it's staying in the key of G major, if that's making sense. Hopefully that's making sense. Staying in the key of G major. Playing some kind of A chord in the key of G major has to be in some kind of minor. A minor can't be A major. Just doesn't work. You know, like these two chords could be the 4th and 5th chord of the key of D, right? You know, G and A are the 4th and 5th chord in the key of D major. So in that case, they could both be considered major chords in the key of D major. But in the key of G major, A is the 2nd degree, and so once again, it's a minor chord. Right? B is the 3rd degree in the key of G major and has to be a minor chord. C is the 4th degree of G major, and once again, it has to be a major chord. D is the 5th degree. 1, 4, and 5 is always major. 2, 3, and 6 is always minor. Right? So once again, it has to be major. D major, right? And then E minor, 6th chord. Right? 7th chord, minor 7, flat 5. And then G major again. So this is giving you a bit of, like, you know, basic chord structure, and just understanding your fretboard. Not really so much theory, but understanding the functions of a major scale, right? And when we say diatonic, we mean to take notes just from that key, right? Just notes from that key. The key of G. We're going to consist of, you know, those notes from the key of G major. And those are all diatonic notes to the key of G major. In that case, they're diatonic. So you want to play diatonic chords in the key of G major. That means those chords all have to contain notes just from the key of G major. So, but knowing this, I can kind of go from any key. I can go from the key of G sharp and major right here in this 4th fret. Instead of move it all up to play G sharp instead of G. I can G sharp, you know, B minor, right? C minor, right? So once again, G sharp. I'm sorry, B flat minor. Sorry, G sharp. B flat minor. This is a B flat note, right? B flat minor, C minor, right? To C sharp major, C sharp major, right? To the C sharp note. It has to be played major because it's the 4th note in the key of G sharp, right? So C sharp major, and then we go to E flat major. That's the 5th note in the key of G sharp. G sharp is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. E flat has to be made major if we're playing in the key of G sharp major. Right? So then we play it. The next one is F. Right? It has to be played as minor. And then the last one before G sharp is your G minor 7 flat 5. Once again, the 7th note out of the key. Doesn't sound necessarily great. Out of the key of G sharp major, right? So hopefully that gives you an idea. And the next one you can do is A. Same thing, right? So just move it all up, you know, minor, minor, major. Just make sure you're doing the whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Back on A again. So A. Some, you know, combinations of the chords from a key and make up a chord progression. And G, just using the major chords from the key of G, G and C and D, right? Or I can play some other variation with some minor chords in it, like play this B minor. Or I can go back to this chord right here. It's a B minor as well. Same thing as this chord, really. It's a B minor, where this one's using this string with the B note as the bass note. Like a B major, but just minor, right? Using this string as the bass note, where this chord down here uses the 2nd string as the bass note, this being a B note. Right? B minor, which is largely like an A minor down here. A minor, B flat minor, B minor, C minor, C sharp minor, D minor, E minor, or you know, maybe I'm off of fret there, but E minor being right here, or a D minor being right here, E flat minor, E minor. So once again, A minor, B flat minor, B minor, C minor, C sharp minor, D minor, E flat minor, E minor. So you remember these two two chords right here that look like A minor, but with the bar, D minor and A minor, those and A minor. You gotta do a little. And then you can derive some other notes to add in or play some leads from that key, right? From that key. In that case, what, G major, I think it was. So anyway, once again, hey, thanks for listening into this video. Maybe it's helping you get some insights as a new or maybe intermediate guitarist, giving you some extra perspective. I doubt any advanced guitarists are going to be like, oh wow, there's something real groundbreaking here for me. But hey, maybe there's a little some tidbit. Maybe you can contribute to the conversation and maybe give some corrections to something I said or some extra insights, right? So, because I'm sure I probably made a few mistakes in there, probably a couple parts. But, you know, it's just kind of giving you a visual, more of a visual of this fretboard, right? And understanding, like I said, the four main ways to make a chord, but there's two strings, right? Like I said, going back here, there's a C major, right? C major open, right? Let's say we want to play this C major over here, right? Open with that same note as the bass. You can see where these two chords connect to this and then over to this, right? Same way up here, C sharp major. Just one fret up with the bar, kind of a hard fret chord to make, but I moved all that C up there, one fret, and added the bar, C sharp major. Now, there's a C sharp major over here. They're both using this note as the bass note, the C sharp note on the second string. And the G, the G connects to this G, or even we take this G and move it up a fret, and add the bar, kind of a hard chord to make way down here, but G sharp major, right? There's a G sharp major, which is using the same bass note as this G sharp major over here, right? Or back down a fret to just G major once again. So I think if you go through this a few times, it's just, you know, maybe just this is enough. Maybe this conflicts, maybe for somebody that didn't quite get this perspective on just understanding the whole fretboard better now. Understanding how to find the chords, the corresponding chords for almost any key, much easier. You know, now you're in the key of B flat major. Well, the next note is just one whole step away, and that's going to make the second chord of the key of B major. B flat major. In this case, it's a C note, right? And the second note in a major key has to make a minor chord, so it's a C minor. Right? So B flat major to C minor. Third note being D minor. And fourth one being E flat major. Fifth one, you know, this key of B flat major, right? B flat major. And second note is C minor, D minor, right? And then E flat major, F major, and then back to F major. So B flat minor, right? So F major, and then to a minor, right? That's G minor, and then A minor 7 flat 5, right? So that's A minor 7 flat 5, right before we get to B flat major again. So I'm just kind of going through a few samples here to maybe help clarify and make it more concrete for someone who's just like still trying to learn the guitar. So maybe this helps. I certainly appreciate a like or a share, or, you know, if you'd like to comment and leave me any, obviously I welcome positive feedback, but hey, just do what you got to do. Let me know if you thought it sucked. By all means, just be respectfully honest. All I recommend or invite. But hey, Micah here for a few minutes, kind of going through this little bit of music theory. Not really theory so much, but structure, I would say. Guitar, fretboard structure. But in the meantime, maybe go back and check out some of my other videos for some finger exercises and more in-depth discussions on some of these elements of the structure of the fretboard and how to relate notes and chords together. And maybe to give you some ideas to make some more music and play to some more music and even learn how to play that ear better. All right, Micah signing out. Thanks for listening in. It's an honor to have you here. See you next time.